Welcome to our first Cyber Talk. This is a Raices Cyber podcast. Thanks to our awesome senior leader, Juliana Seiko, who you will be able to meet in a sec. Our main purpose for this is for you guys to hear the voices of cybersecurity experts that have been in the field for a while. We want to understand how they started their career, what led them to follow this career path, and how they chose actually the career path within cybersecurity, right? Because as many of us know, cybersecurity is a very broad field with specific paths, offensive, defensive, GRC, and within those, there's even more specific roles, right? So learning from those who had navigated their journey successfully, it's truly a blessing. And I appreciate not only your patience, but your dedication for being here. As you will see once this is released with our podcast, the quality that our senior leaders have brought to this is just amazing. So without further ado, I want to introduce our beautiful, awesome Juliana. Juliana, thank you so much for doing this for all of our
Of
members.
course. This is content for the community, by the community, for everyone. My name is Juliana. I joined Raices a while back. It's been at least 2 years, and I've met great friends because of it. So, really, that's why I'm kind of here doing this project. I don't have any incentive other than I want to see a successful pipeline of talent, become part of cybersecurity, and not only become part of it, but also stay. So we want to make sure they find the right placement. In my day-to-day, I'm a solutions architect at Cisco. So that means I'm in a client-facing role, and I hear a lot about different challenges from people in the C-level, C-suite, to network engineers, security analysts. So my job is to understand those challenges and help them overcome, but also align to long-term goals that the each business has and really find solutions to those problems. So kind of like a technical therapist, and I cover a little bit of everything, so cybersecurity being part of that. So that is what I do in my day to day. My side hustles are nonprofits. One of them being Raices, and like Yadis mentioned, I am part of the workforce development team and educational resources team. So we're kicking off this podcast really so we can understand the different blueprint people have followed. That doesn't mean that's going to be your recipe to success. It varies by person, but what we want is to make sure you're inspired, you feel represented. Again, Yaris started this initiative so we can make sure we cover. There's a lot of podcasts out there, but we want to cover people that are like you, whether early in career, later stage in their career, but also different cultures. That has a lot of impact on how we get started in our career. And we talked a lot about that with Laury when we had our interview. So to kick it off, let me introduce my dear guest, Laury, my very good friend that we met through Raisa. So, Laury, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yes, saludos a todos. My name is Laury Rodríguez. I'm originally from the Dominican Republic, but I've been in the New York area for a couple of years now. Uli and I met through Raices at DEF CON, I think, 2 years ago. We did like a Raices meetup either at DEF CON or Black Hat, something like that. And we've stayed friends ever since. I've crashed at Chicago to go see her. So, of course, when she asked if I can do this favor for her, I said yes. Because I also, like her, have my side hustles in nonprofits, not necessarily cyber nonprofits, but anything related to Latinas. I'm a translator here at Delaney Hall for those Hispanos that are being detained currently. So for me, it's really important to give back to the Latina community and others in adjacent communities, intersectionality. Other than that, in terms of my professional life, I'm an incident response consultant with Unit 42. I've been a consultant for almost 3 years now, and I also did one internship with them right before. And yeah, we're gonna dive a little bit more into my work in just a bit. But thank you guys for being here.
You are so cool, and I'm so proud to have you as my friend because I do a lot of translating too with the refugee community, and we can reach out to us one-on-one. We have a lot of resources if you're interested in that type of work. But since we are here on the topic of cyber, that sounds like a really cool role you have. And do you want to kind of tell us what does it mean?
Yeah.
It sounds very stressful when I first hear the title, right?
Yeah.
Incident response consultant. What do you do in a day-to-day? Give us a recap of what that role means.
Well, my day to day is never the same. My hour to hour is never the same. As you know, Uli, I'm always all over the world. I literally just got back from Dubai and Riyadh 2 days ago. So my heart goes out to everyone over there. I spent 2, almost 3 months working on an insider threat investigation over there in the Middle East. So I got very accustomed to the people, and my heart really goes out to them. Places that I walked by a million times, unfortunately, have been bombed in the past 48 hours. So incident response has taken me around the world, but of course, with that comes a lot of responsibility, and it can be stressful at times, especially when I do longer term projects. But other than that, my day to day is there is no such thing. I work on an array of cases since we are consultants, so meaning we help clients externally. We do not do consulting internally for Palo Alto. So it really just depends how many cases I'm working on at the time and what the environment is like and what it is that they're going through. So, for example, that Middle Eastern case that I was on, it was a multi-month project, which is actually not the norm. Usually, our projects are smaller scale and they're usually ransomware. So those investigations tend to move quickly. So in my day-to-day, I've definitely had to learn how to balance and juggle different types of work streams, whether that would be host analysis, whether that would be threat hunting in their XDR instance. And I've also just had to learn to be a good communicator because my hour to hour, let alone my day to day, is never the same.
Oh, there was a lot, but I mean, I agree with you. I think one of the reasons why I like being part of Raices is that we don't go straight into a corporate mode with we remember that there's context.
Mhm.
People, there's cultural context, and I think it's important that we stop and highlight that. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I'm glad we have you here and safe. Now, as far as incidents response goes, it sounds like you are client facing, correct? But you do a lot of work outside of, maybe the client facing part is when you share the findings
Mhm.
or, that part. But it's a good mix. Would you say so that you interact with people outside, but also with your team on
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
case you're investigating?
Yes, of course. On any given day, I can be interacting with 2 people to 20 people. It really depends, again, the case and the size.
Yeah.
Internally, you never work with the same people all the time. We have teams per se, but depending on your skill set, on your capacity, you'll get assigned an investigation, and you don't know who will get assigned, or they'll just assign whoever can support. So incident response, especially consulting, has definitely taught me to be able to work with an array of people, an array of capabilities, how to receive mentorship as well as how to give mentorship. And then, like you said, I do also have the client-facing portion where sometimes I'm presenting my findings to a legal team. So that conversation, I will, of course, handle it differently than I would if I'm presenting to C-suite versus if I'm presenting to a more technical team.
So I want to emphasize that because a lot of times when we hear of a role and a path in cyber, but and everywhere really, we don't always know what it entails. I like to ask this in interview questions, like who are the cross-functional teams and stakeholders I will be engaged with? And that's important because language changes and interaction
Mhm.
changes depending on who you talk to or what collaboration you need with that facet of the business. So legal, when I hear you say legal, that's very important, right? Because it it has a lot of impact to a business reputation,
Mhm.
how you deliver a finding, how you deliver your report, and knowing how to change the language if you're talking to a C-suite or a director, and knowing how to talk about operational risk and really the words that kind of that are keywords for them. And then when you talk to a lower level analyst, drill down to the details. So, okay, so if someone is interested in IR, incident response, they need to be good communicators or at least have the aptitude that they want to improve their communication skill set. But I think it's important highlighting here that that is a transferable skill. Curiosity, willingness to work with cross-functional teams, being a good communicator. And then let's go further in and explore the technical part of it a little bit. And what I mean by that, we can only speak for your journey on this episode. Tell us about how you prepared for a role like this. And I want you to look at it with a lens of education, and I want you to look at it with a lens of hands-on work and how did you get practice. And I know you went to school for this, right? So try to just talk about from your perspective, and then we can touch a little bit of trends maybe and patterns you see in this role throughout your team or other teams outside of your current company.
Yeah, so in my case, I was lucky enough that the community college in my county, it was actually a very good community college, the number one in the state at the time. So I was going originally for computer networking. That was what was interesting to me. But within that degree program, they also had the Cisco Networking Academy, which within that they had certain cybersecurity classes that were required, both offensive and defensive style classes. So that's kind of where the interest peaked. And then when I transferred over to a four-year university, their program was actually weaker than my community college. So I found myself having to self-learn even outside of class. So the four-year degree was more computer science based. I wanted something more cyber based because I had decided that is where I wanted to pursue a career. So I did a lot of CTFs. I did a lot of Hack the Box, a lot of free trainings online. I would literally go on Eventbrite and look for events. I would go to every B-sides in the Northeast that I could possibly go to, like as far out as Pittsburgh, just because to meet people, to see what they're learning, and to also take advantage of being there in person, being a student, and getting any discounts. Thankfully, I was able to eventually get a cybersecurity internship, and in there, I made sure to take advantage. Compared to the other students at the time, I didn't go to a good cyber program. All of them did go to a good cyber program. So I really felt like I had to take advantage of being there. And I also took advantage of leaning into my non-cyber technical skills. So, for example, in college, how I made money was working for IEEE at a robotics lab. So I'm very familiar with microcontrollers and things of that nature. So when I was there, our then VP of Digital Forensics was working on a point of sale system investigation for litigation. And so I made sure to like shadow him, and then any skills that I had that were potentially of use, he let me like tinker around with it. I also proposed a internship project that used those technical skills as well. And that's kind of the motto for any career in cyber. You're going to have to continue self-learning and self-teaching outside because unfortunately there is a lot we have to know. Sometimes it could feel like you need to know everything, but you're never going to know everything. So just make sure to continue being curious and not letting your technical skills ever go to waste or become redundant. Make sure you're always working on them.
Love it. So what I'm hearing is nothing was handed to you. You take opportunity as it was given, but also you extend that opportunity. So I say that is important, and I want to emphasize it is in my 2 years being very involved with nonprofits, I've seen how people that are very audacious and they might not have all the skills, right? They might be newcomers and they get opportunity because they speak up and they come with
Mhm.
a plan. So sometimes that is all that is keeping you from getting the right opportunity. So I love that you
That
said
is
that.
so true. That is so true. Even when you guys get into your career, literally right now at work, I reached out to one like the director of a unit, and I was like, "Hey, I've been working on this on the side. I think it should be a work stream. What do you think?" And he was like, "Great idea. Like, build it out, create the Confluence page, and then share it with me, and we'll get it kicked off." So it really is like having the audacity, like you said, of like, hey, let me try this. So even if something doesn't create it for yourself, create it for the team, and that'll show leadership. That'll show that you are consistently learning, you're consistently trying to better the company, and at the same time, it's going to be difficult. So you're going to learn along the way, and that'll also look good for your career long term. So I agree.
And worth noting, if you want buy-in from your leadership and you find yourself like, oh, they're not gonna hear me out on this, try to like sit down and analyze the business that you're
Mhm.
working in. What initiatives can you attach yourself? And now we have AI that we can use to help mold our story and whatever project we want to spearhead. And we can use it to really like translate it to their language. So when you find yourself attaching whatever project you want to lead to the business goals, and you're able to show either how it makes more money to the business, reduces risk, and speaking that language, it'll be easier to not only get budget or even get opportunity within your team. So you spoke a little bit about network engineering, and obviously I'm biased because I have my Cisco Certified Networking Associate and then Networking Professional. I was
Mhm.
able to get that through my employer who creates the certifications. I love that you went to a college, a community college, which by the way, a lot of our stories start like that because
Mhm.
I know I was like low income, right? So my sibling had to go to a community college first and then transfer to a full-time program. So that's a very good advice, right? Like get your gen eds out of the way since education might be required, a 4-year education for different roles. But also be careful what school you pick. It's not about the name. And I like your story because we spoke more about this before with your community college because it was one where they had a partnership with something like Cisco Networking Academy. Try to look for professors that are doing things outside and they happen to teach at these community colleges. So the way you're really maximizing the value and you're not just going to any community college. So I really like that. And I know you didn't mention it yet, but we talked a little bit about what kind of inspired you, and you mentioned having that innate curiosity within you and always breaking things and wanting to learn how they work. But you also mentioned a shadowing trip to a network operations center. So can you tell us the importance of that exposure and how it really put things into perspective of what you want to do and how you want to get involved in cyber?
Yeah, so I think we first need to go back to my time in DR before I moved to the US. Now the infrastructure in the Dominican Republic is way better than what it was in the early 2000s when I was a kid and lived there. I'm from a place called San Jose de las Matas. It's very much like campo. So
Shout
we
out.
like if you did not have a generator, you did not have electricity, like point blank period. It wasn't, oh, se fue la luz. It was more, oh, llegó la luz type of vibe.
Mm.
If you know, you know. So I remember when I was little, I would like look at the power lines and I was like, oh, I'm gonna figure out how to make these work for cheap forever. And so then that's how I started learning computer networking because I thought that was what I had to do. And in that program, on the first year, at the end of the spring semester, they took us to AT&T's then headquarters. I lived in New Jersey at the time, and in New Jersey, there's a lot of network operation centers, including Verizon and AT&T. So we did a field trip at AT&T's NOC Center, and there they had a holograph of the globe where allegedly they were tracking real-time intrusion attacks on their towers. And at the time, a lot of them were coming from Russia. So you would see the map, it was like a whole bunch of red connecting between Russia and the United States. And I just thought that was super cool. And that kind of piqued my interest into cyber specifically, pivoting from networking.
That's awesome. I mean, seeing a visual, and I'm a huge believer in early exposure to things because even if you don't pursue something the next year or two, I have a lot of full circle stories like that where I saw something when I was in my college days or I took a shadowing trip and it came back full circle.
Yeah.
Because that, even if it's just a little inspiration and meeting people that, oh, like she's doing it, maybe I could do that too. If she finds it interesting and I get along with her and her personality is like that, maybe I would like it too. So it's worth pursuing. So really, we want this series to be a reminder to people that you don't have to have analysis, like, don't let analysis paralysis keep you from applying to things and going for roles that you might not necessarily think it's for you. And Okay, so that's awesome. So let's pivot a little bit to maybe some of the technical skills that you need when you work in IR and a little bit more specifics because I think we have a question here that from William. As an incident responder, would you say both defensive and offensive cyber skills are equally important?
I wouldn't say equally important, but I do think of offensive security skills are important. You need to understand a hacker's mentality to be able to defend against them. You need to understand what it is that they're abusing or penetrating and what is the type of artifacts that it leaves behind so that you know what to look for in your investigations. Me personally, that's actually something that I'm leaning into right now. I'm in a master's program and I'm specifically focusing on the OffSec track because I already, on my day-to-day, do the defensive track. So I want to know more about the OffSec track so I know what to look for at my 9 to 5 job. So equally important, I wouldn't say equally because at the end of the day, you're in off your defense, but you need to know both. Yes, definitely. Or it's good to know.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, right? Like whatever, if it's the opposite team you're working on, you want to know how the other team
Exactly. Yeah.
operates. So you're stronger. And then we have another question for IR. What if any issues have you experienced specifically with hash evidence and how legal determines if said evidence can be submitted or not for future prosecution? Examples: when local technicians review the evidence prior to any hash being established as part of the rules of evidence for IR.
Yeah. So this is where the problem of we keep mixing DF and IR together. Usually it's DFIR, but in reality, they are two separate concepts that just work in parallel. So the concept you're referring to is actually more so under digital forensics. And digital forensics was born out of the need of litigation. And of course, with litigation, when it's criminal, for example, what the government cares about is the full beyond a doubt accuracy of whatever it is that they're posing. So for litigation, you have to be 99.99% sure of what you're saying or presenting. In incident response, we care more about speed than full completion. So for litigation, we no longer do litigation at Unit 42. That is some expert witness is what we would call it. That's something we have moved away from. We only focus on incident response. So of course, we do follow chain of custody agreements. We do have a workflow that we require for any evidence that either we acquire or that the client acquires on our behalf. And on top of that, we do have a forensics lab that handles everything. If something is broken with the chain, well, it's actually quite difficult for anything to be broken within the chain when it comes to IR, since essentially the chain is get an image or get an image of whatever it is that you want us to analyze and upload it to us. So we don't really deal with those litigation issues. That is something that is more on the expert witness side of things instead of IR.
Fascinating. Isn't it wild that we we were talking about both of us liking watching Criminal Minds? And I mean you are living that in that world in a way. Love that for us. So David is asking, is there a specific story you have, Laurie, of your experience as an IR consultant where you learned the most or where you were challenged the most?
I have so many stories.
Okay.
I'll
And
give
if you think
you,
about it, how long have you been doing this for?
yeah, I have 3 years at least worth of stories.
I love it. I
And
love it.
Unit 42, thankfully, is a huge org, so we have
It
interesting.
exposes you to a lot.
So let me give you, if there's time, I can give three
Yeah,
stories.
there's time.
Um, the first one, I'll start with actually my most recent case. That is the reason why I'm taking a week off next week. I just got back from a 2.5 month insider threat investigation. So that definitely posed a bag of challenges that are not normal for incident responders. For example, it being so long term, that is not the norm for IR. Like I said, we tend to care more about speed and accuracy and solving the issue at hand versus like full completion. So being there for so long, I had to learn kind of cyber stamina, if that makes sense, and being on the same case, looking at the same data for 2.5 months, it was something different for my brain. On top of that, an insider threat investigation is much, much, much different than like a ransomware or even an APT. Um, what this person was doing within their company was within their job function, except that they took it a step further and then did and acquired data, for example, outside of their job function. So how I had to think about those, for example, Windows event log IDs that I normally look at, I had to think about it differently, or had to use perhaps event IDs that I don't normally use in a ransomware because I'm not dealing with a ransomware. I'm trying to catch someone doing using their legitimate powers illegitimately. So that definitely was something I had to morph my brain a little throughout the investigation. So that's definitely one, and that's the most recent. So it's fresh in my brain. Um, Other than that, the APT's investigations I love because they are very different. So APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threat Actors. I worked one that involved the Iranians about a year-ish ago, and that one was very interesting to me because they are very different than, let's say, your Russian, Chinese, North Korean APTs. The others tend to be very financially motivated or very destructive, whereas the Iranian APT groups tend to be more stealthy. They, I think, on average, spend upwards of 300 days in an environment, whereas the others might be way less or even less than 100. So that was really interesting to see how long they stayed in, and they weren't financially motivated. They were actually intelligence motivated. They would stay in and try to learn about the systems that are in that environment so that they can then use that against, for example, Israel in attacks against them. So that was really interesting for me to see and to also support as a technical analyst, to be able to be like, oh, they've been here way longer and they're not necessarily stealing money, but they're stealing intelligence. So that was a really interesting case, and that really pivoted me into like what's going on in the cyberspace in the Middle East. So that was super interesting. And then I think the most difficult case I worked on is something that was just supporting our government. And it was just, again, another long-term investigation. It was extremely, extremely difficult because we were dealing with an APT, and my brain just hurt and I had to take time off. And I that's when I learned the balance. I'm very much a yes person. Like I say yes to everything when it comes to work. But that case really taught me how important it is to take breaks and to not burn out, because when you burn out, it can take a while to get back into shape, if that makes sense. So that case is something that I think definitely marked my cyber career, and is I do things differently now after that case than I did before, is all I would say.
So I let's let's dive deeper into that because I think from ever since I started getting involved, it's like burnout is a key word in this
Mhm.
industry. You are someone that has a lot of passion for this field of work. And I know for a fact that when I have a lot of passion, there's nothing like no boundaries that will stop me from putting in the like extra work, even if it is like a 1 a.m., 2 a.m. session being a night owl. How how exactly are you implementing um best practices and boundaries in this line of work? Because I know I talk to you sometimes and it's a weekend and you're sort of on call, if you want to call it that, right? When the rest of us, maybe it's a weekend for us. But maybe that has benefits throughout the week. So how do you maintain a work-life balance when you're on call? Um, and how have you learned to like really implement best practices in your day-to-day?
Yeah, on call is actually not bad. It's only in my level once every other month or once every 3 months, so it's not a burden. But sometimes, Uli, like I said, we're friends outside of Raices, so sometimes you'll text me and I'll be working, and that's me not having work-life balance. That's me being like, oh, this case is so interesting. Like, yes, I volunteer for the weekend, but also perhaps because I've been with Unit 42 since I was an intern, I feel very I love my team. I love working with my team. So we had an instance where the weekend team was just really bogged down. People, for example, on paternity leave or maternity leave. So I would volunteer a little extra because I do very much feel like it's a team. And that did I did reap the benefits in the future from being vocal, like yes, like if you guys need anything, let me know. Leadership is always watching. And at the end of the day, we're consultants. So whatever type of consulting you do, there's always going to be periods where you might need to support a little more just so that everything maintains a flow. But other than that, like I said, that investigation that I worked on 2 years ago, it really changed my thought process, and I have learned the hard way that I need breaks and I need a better balance. So I make sure that I have things outside of work that I look forward to that I do on a weekly basis, not just like once in a blue moon. So for example, I am part of a Latina dance studio here or in Jersey City. So I do like salsa dancing, I do bachata, I do pachanga, etc. And I do that multiple times a week, and that's really important to me, as well as like I like to take classes at the gym. So just staying like physically active since I'm sitting all day, and also being involved with my community. So in that dance studio, a lot of people are Hispanics, which I love interacting with other members of the community. I also, like I said, am very involved with the translation services that are being offered at ICE detention centers. So that fills my cup in a different way. And just overall, I make sure to lean into my community and be a good community member, meaning like helping my friends or leaning into them, making sure that I don't let anyone slip through the crack, which sometimes I am guilty of. I will admit I can be slow to answer messages when I'm too honed in on a case. But other than that, you have to also realize that you go through phases in life. I'm not married, I don't have kids, so I have the capacity in me to perhaps do a little bit more because that's just where the phase in my life is. But I am very cognizant that there will come a day where I need to slow things down or maybe look for an internal IR role, and that I won't have the capacity to be a consultant anymore. And it's okay to go through those phases in life. It's just being self-aware that there are phases in life.
There's so much to unpack there. I'm like, where do I go first? Oh, and that's why we go to a concert once in a while, right? To
Yeah,
distress.
yeah.
Um,
It's that
so
bunny twice.
I knew you were gonna plug him in. It's okay. Now the world knows about him, and we're so proud. You said at your level. So do you find like the on-call schedule, and maybe does it differ by whatever firm you're part of? Associate level versus like more senior. Uh, does it like depend?
Yes.
We get more on-call, or like how does it work?
Yes. So, um, it depends the size of your team and it'll depend your role. So for example, I have coworkers who used to be on teams that were only 4 people, like very, very, very small firms, and they've told me that it would literally be one week every month that they were on call. So that's a lot.
Yes.
Even here at Unit 42, I've seen us grow in the past 4 years that I've been here, and we used to be a smaller team, so we used to be on call maybe every month and a half. Now we've expanded a bit, so I'm on call a little less. Of course, if you're the higher up you go, you might be on call a little bit more. You'll be on call during the week. I'm only on call on a weekend every so often, so not bad in my opinion. But yeah, it definitely depends the size of your team and how high up you are in responsibility for on call.
Awesome. And then we have another question. Which types of investigations would you say live along the noisiest trails? Just thinking back to when you were discussing about insider threat versus ransomware investigations or certain APTs.
Yeah, so usually it's ransomware that is the quote unquote nosiest. They're financially motivated, they want money, they want to threaten you to give them their money, and they're very nosy, so they're noisy. So once they're ready to encrypt everything, they'll go ahead and do that. They'll make sure you don't have access to your data. Sometimes they'll make sure you don't even have access to your infrastructure, and they're going to do whatever they need to do to make you pay whatever it is the ransom is. So definitely that. And then in terms of APTs, there are some APTs that are more destructive than others, like I mentioned, and others that like to stay in the network long term, so they'll be quieter.
And I mean, I love that it's come down to this because I always emphasize so much ties back to cultural, I call it cultural intelligence. And it's not just like, oh, I'm from this place and like I behave this way, right? There's a lot of context we can pull from human behavior and cultural intelligence. Oh, there we have another question. What was the most aha moment in your most complex investigation?
My most aha
And
moment.
maybe if it's something about what you learned about people or processes, frameworks,
Well,
something
like
something
I
that you
keep
learned
going
in.
back to the Iranian APT group
Okay.
just because I was so used to APTs being so noisy and destructive that seeing them be so quiet and so stealthy and seeing what it was that they were after just really like stuck with me. And it really showed how like even cyber is affected by the geopolitical
Mm-hmm.
activities that are going on. They were doing what they were doing because they wanted to, you know, do something else on the political side of things. So that was something that I don't know stuck with me after that investigation. Also, I worked a really, really, really large ransomware last year that was a company that was like a third of that country's GDP and I love Linux host forensics. I do a lot of Linux host forensics, and to the point where I'm one of the SMEs, and I was called in to assist that team with certain Linux servers. And I remember talking to the CISO of the manufacturing company of those servers, and they were like, "Oh, well, we never had this. This has never happened on our servers. It's not a server issue. Like, it does not have a vulnerability." And he was like, "Prove it to me that it was like." So essentially, me and the my teammate, we had to like replicate that and kind of show like this could show them kind of like the theory of like this is how we think the threat actor was able to utilize your server to bounce into this environment. So that was difficult because I kind of felt like the pressure was on me of like, okay, Laury, the Linux girl, like you better. So I was like, oh, the pressure, and then also relating that back to a person who has stake in that product it was yeah. But anyways, there was an aha moment. I can't share what it was, of course, but that is a investigation I think about as well.
I mean, there is so much that goes into a role like this. It's it feels like does anything even prepare you for this type of engagements? You have to really like advocate for yourself, your work, slowly gain expertise in something, become an SME. So I think the best advice we can really give people is whatever team you start and you become a part of, try to find the gap in that
Hmm.
team
Hmm.
or see what you're driven towards, what you're passionate about, but always think about the gap. And how do you attach yourself to that gap and slowly become the SME? It's not going to be overnight. And then it will help you kind of like you'll get pulled in by other colleagues. But it sounds like you have to really advocate for your your case and have the proof to back it up. So I
Yeah,
really want to
you
emphasize
do.
that.
I assume maybe other firms that aren't consulting or that are smaller, maybe you don't need to advocate for yourself at the beginning of your career. Maybe it's just like this came in, everybody works on it because of
Okay.
the size. But definitely at a larger firm, and especially if you're consulting with a billable target, you definitely need to get your name in the game, make sure you're out there, you're visible, and then with time,
What's a billable target for someone that might have said, oh, what's up?
so a billable target, so it's kind of similar to how lawyers work. So we have our clients,
Yeah.
and every hour that I work on that client's investigation, that's called a billable hour, and that's how we charge them essentially at the end of the investigation. So you have to keep track of every hour, every 15 minutes that you work.
Yeah. Another skill you need to. You're very
Yeah,
good at
time
organizing.
management,
Yeah.
organization, super important. I've learned the hard way to keep track. Um, but it's good. Like at first it's very daunting and it's hard to maybe even reach your target when you're new. But with time, if you become an SME or you really work well in regardless of what you're doing, you'll have people calling you for assistance, and that's where you want to be.
So I know we touched a little bit about this, but I'm trying to think of the current landscape in terms of finding a job, even if it's to get your foot in the door, and the reality of how hard it might be right now to get a job out there.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of schools of thoughts, mainly two on this one, and that's certifications. But I want us to think about it from a perspective of um, getting my foot in the door and passing that HR element just so we can go through a recruiter, so my resume gets accepted even for that first round of interviews. What have you found in your experience are some needle movers certifications that, at least for IR, um, do give you those like resume creds or HR creds to pass through that round of screening?
I think for IR, they definitely care more about what you can do versus certifications. So that is a little bit difficult. The certifications are more like a bonus, not necessarily what's going to
Yeah.
get you in the door. For entry level, for example, I always recommend looking for associate programs. Those are geared towards college grads, so a college degree, any type of college degree, and also a lot of these companies will also accept military service in lieu of college education. And then just from there, showing that like on your own, you've done some learning, some cyber learning. That tends to be the easiest way, but I do recognize that with the rise of AI, perhaps they're reducing the amount of entry-level employees, and
Mhm.
um, that's a whole other thing above my pay grade, but
Yes.
that is just the reality of things.
Mhm.
Um, if you don't have like military or a college degree, then you can look at just applying directly, and then that's where you have to show like what have you been doing like outside or independently to learn or use your security skills, whether that be certifications, labs, etc. GR,
Starting a blog and
yeah.
documenting this APTs, and even if it's a process teaching yourself, but putting it out there, the process that you go through of writing about it, it forces you
Hmm.
to really learn it, right? So it's a living document of proof of knowledge, if you say
No,
so.
actually, yeah, that's a good point. I personally do know of like two people at my firm that were hired because we found them through their blogs. So, people are reading, so don't think, oh, there's so many blogs. Like, if it's a good blog and it's helping the cyber community, I promise you, like one of us is reading it. Or you don't even need your own blog. There's like DFIR or other types of blogs where, if you post something or you send them something and it's good quality, they'll add it to their blogs, which people are already tuned into. So if you don't want to do the whole thing, like there's maybe you can be a contributor to an existing one.
Nice. Love that. Oh, I didn't even think about that. See, I'm checking out the questions we have here. There's a question out of curiosity, since I work in a SOC, in the IR cases you've been working lately, do most of these organizations already have a SOC in place, or is there still a maturity gaps, especially in mid-sized environments like that manufacturing case you mentioned?
Yes. So actually, I'll take it a step further. Not only do they tend to have a SOC, but they tend to even have an internal IR team. So we tend to come in when things like are too overwhelming for those internal SOC and IR teams. It is very common for them to have something or someone. I have worked with organizations that maybe it's a very small incident response or SOC team, so maybe only two, three analysts on each. But still, I think almost all of them have some type of either SOC or IR presence internally.
Perfect. Now let's pivot a little bit to future state. Every career that I like to analyze, I want people to think about the long-term aspect of it too. So, for example, I'm a huge advocate too of what you mentioned, early in career programs, because that's how I got started in this
Mhm.
career that I do now. It's not very common that college students straight out of college end up becoming solutions architect. But there is a ramp up resident technical residency program that is very meticulously created so that it sets you up for success. When looking at IR as a career pathway, can you walk us through and feel free to align it with your personal goals in the next few years? Where can it take you? What are the different, how does it branch out? Is it one where you keep moving up the ladder like a SOC analyst, different tiers, and then you go into whatever specialty you like? So walk us through what that looks like, a career roadmap for an IR consultant.
Yeah, so you can work up the ladder. So if you can go from consultant to senior to principal, director, senior director, etc. And as you go up the totem pole, it tends to become less technical and more business oriented. So you are more focused on customer satisfaction while the analysts continue doing the analysis. So you're more strategic versus tactical. That's one path you can take. You can also then pivot from consulting to internal IR, so leading an internal incident response team and making sure you handle kind of like any day-to-day alerts that might pop up or that the SOC will tell you to that needs remediation or further investigation. I have some senior leadership that I've worked with in the past couple of years who get to a certain point, get high on the totem pole, they're satisfied with their IR career and end up pivoting to smaller firms doing digital forensics or even expert witness testimony because they just want that work-life balance. I know people who go down a very strict like rabbit hole and really like only one type of investigation. So let's say insider threat, and they'll go to firms that only do insider threat. So there is a lot that you can do. As for me, I'm currently just working. I really like IR consulting right now, so I'm just going up the totem pole. And my goals for the next 5 years more involve being just more of taking on leadership roles, which is something that I've already done. Like I said, I have created new work streams. I have led some existing work streams, and I also focus on being SME on one or two domains of importance to me. So that's kind of where I am currently in the next 5 years, still in the grind.
No, I think things start falling into place when you align yourself with, it sounds cheesy at first, but you do need passion for what you do to stay long term in something. And the good thing though, it sounds like once you have that expertise and you slowly ramp up and you gain that expertise, then you get to call the shots. So you can order off the menu and say, I want to go to a smaller firm, I go to a larger firm and work with this type of capacity. So that's exciting to hear. It's very choose your own adventure with IR. It's very flexible, but also I think there's risk and reward. Like a career in solutions architecture, I would say. There's a lot of risk and there's a lot of reward. Um, did you face a specific or setback or roadblock that brought friction at the start of your journey? I like this question because we talk about the successes, and then we neglect what roadblocks we might have had. So, do you have any stories like that to speak to?
Yeah, I think because my bachelor's degree was in computer science and IT, I had a very technical background, but not a cyber technical background. So like I could code something for you, but I didn't necessarily, I wasn't the best at like Windows forensics, for example, at the time or Windows analysis. So I did feel like during my associate program experience that at times I felt like I had to catch up with the others, with my peers who came from proper cyber degree programs who were taking like uh, forensic classes, for example, or we're taking intrusion classes, network intrusion classes, whereas I was taking like data science or whatever it was at the time. So I did feel that at the beginning, and I think everyone also goes through imposter syndrome when they start something. So that was definitely a friction, especially my first year, that I really had to overcome. And I ended up supplementing it with, I took like 3 SANS certs my first year on top of working. So I don't know if I necessarily recommend that because it was a lot.
Yes, it sounds like a
But
lot.
I wanted to ramp up quickly. And so yeah, I just took that first year to like lock in.
That's real. That's real. I think that imposter syndrome is what keeps a lot of us from thriving. And you are already a leader in your community and your work, so you're set up for success there. Really quick. So as we're wrapping up, what is one trend in attacker behavior that is in the headlines, or one that is missing?
Attacker behavior.
Yeah. Or any trends that you're seeing in IR that maybe is not in the headlines, but you see it in your day-to-day work, and you would encourage the audience to look more into.
I think everything's in the headlines. Obviously, like AI is the buzzword, but it is rightfully so the
What's that?
buzzword. You're definitely going to have to learn to work with artificial intelligence. I don't necessarily think it's going to replace analysts, but I do think it's going to reduce the amount of analysts perhaps in the
Okay.
future. So I know everyone says like AI is not going to replace you. It's gonna replace those who don't use AI. So unfortunately, that is true. So there's like bots out there, there's LLMs of like incident responders who like it'll help you analyze. Or even if you're practicing on your own and you're like doing, let's say, a triage analysis, like lean into already available models out there to help you with your analysis. That's kind of the point of how the cyber or incident response community is using AI. We're using it to be able to solve problems faster. Um, and honestly, that's kind of good because these attacks are getting faster. Ransomwares, for example, start to end are moving much faster than even 2 years ago. So the fact that we have tools that are artificial intelligence based to help us speed up analysis is a positive, I would say, overall, because attackers are only getting better and they're also using AI to be better in their tactics. So yeah.
No, I love that you touched on that because it wasn't even one of my questions, and I'm gonna start asking everyone how they're using, because when I started filming this a year ago, um, it wasn't like what's happening right now. A lot
Yeah.
of has advanced. And then finally, what would be your personal advice to whether a youth or adult who is thinking about cybersecurity as a career? That is a loaded question.
I feel like you can ask me this question 1,000 times and I would answer 1,000 different ways because there's
At
so
this moment, what feels right to you?
I think with any career, you have to really like what you do. It'll make your life easier. I think if I didn't love what I do, I would have burnt out or been very miserable because it is not easy. Like sometimes I genuinely feel my brain hurting. Like I can feel the fumes coming out because it's
Good.
like it's a lot of high level thinking sometimes, and you're just like, oh, da, da, da.
You're using
Like I
it.
genuinely feel it like heating up. But I always wonder like people that I've met throughout the years who lost that spark, like they must be miserable. So make sure that if you want to go into cyber, that you're not going into it for potential money because there's less out there than you might expect.
Love that you said that. But because I think lately we've had a lot of people come into this industry. Can't blame them, right? It's okay if money is your motivator, but you're gonna burn out really quick if that is why
Mhm.
you got into cybersecurity.
Like there's other careers that you'll make the
Yeah.
same or even more with like a better work-life balance. So for IR, definitely you have to, there's a certain level of like that you need to have for this field and a certain level of curiosity just for your own sanity. Um, but if you love it, like me, you're gonna have a blast and you're gonna work on such interesting investigations. You might even travel for investigations and like your day-to-day will never feel like a chore. At least for me, it doesn't. But definitely make sure that you want to do this because it's not necessarily easy.
And I have to ask, are you all hiring right now? Do you have any programs? Do you have anything you want to maybe do a quick shout out for or let the audience know?
Yes, so we do. Oh, sorry, my cat is jumping up. So we do, I
She's
think
welcome to join us, or he, the cat.
you'll see that. We do have our internship applications open for both DFIR and CRM, so cyber risk and management. Well, at least as of last week, it was open. So that would be on Ripple Match. And then we also have some some positions open across the world. Like for example, we have a Latin American team that is looking for additional leadership, so like directors, if anyone's interested, or principal consultants. So that's higher level. I know our JPAC team is looking for various levels, so consultants up. And I'm not sure if EMEA is hiring, but we do have positions open, is what I'm saying. So check out the Unit 42 hiring page. And then for internships, that would be on Ripple Match.
Wow, amazing. I didn't expect that, but love to hear it because we love providing solutions, now just talking about what the career path is like. So that is all the questions for now, but if you have more questions for Laury, how can they reach out to you? Do you have your work public anywhere? Are you on LinkedIn? But yeah, how can the audience reach out to you if they have more questions?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. It's just literally Laury
Laury.
Laury R. Rodriguez or Laury Rodriguez. And it's if you go to the Raices LinkedIn, it's in the post, one of the last posts, so you can find me there.
And mention Raices podcast.
Yes. Yeah, that's probably the best place. I used to be on Discord. I am on Discord kind of, but I have it on mute, so I probably won't see it. So LinkedIn is probably best, or Signal, etc.
Oh my
Perfect.
goodness. I cannot thank you, both of you. Juliana, you're an amazing host. Laurie, you were so authentic, and I love that. Not a lot of people have the opportunity to have a very transparent, honest conversation with a cybersecurity expert. And it's so important to be able to have access to that information, to ask the questions that are out there, lingering without any filters, right? Is it worth it? Is it something you enjoy? Is it, just transferable skills, which is amazing. So thank you once again for helping us launch our first episode. And the full podcast is going to be available, Laurie, in all the platform. You will get more information soon. But thank you once again. And for those who, attended the workshop, that says a lot. Sunday, you're here to continue learning from the experts in the field. And like Gloria and Alana said, you need to definitely have that passion, right, in order to avoid any burnout and to enjoy life. So I love the salsa dancing. We need to see a video to see how good you're at.
Laury doing the República Dominicana proud.
Me encanta, me
That's
encanta.
when we talk about representation, right? We hopefully we can inspire more folks from that area.
That sounds awesome. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Any final words, Juliana? I'll let you close your podcast. Thank you,
Yeah,
Laurie,
I
so
mean
much for being here.
we expect this monthly series to drop, and if you have recommendations, Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn personally, or if you want to speak and share your story. Obviously, we want to diversify a little bit the experiences and talk about different career paths. But please reach out. I'm always looking for new people to interview, hear their stories. And then if you have follow-up questions, reach out to Laury. If you're interested, please apply. And then we will be officially as Raices RSA at the end of March. So if you will be out there, let me know and we can connect in person. I will also be at the WISIS conference at the beginning of March. So a lot happening in the month of March. And then follow us on all socials on YouTube. We'll be posting this on YouTube. So you have a living library to reference. And yeah, I think that's all I have. I'll keep talking if you let me.
No, thank you so much. And so a
And
couple of
Laurie will be at High Tech next month. Um, if anyone wants to connect there. What is High Tech, Laurie, really quick?
Hispanics in Leadership Conference. So I think there's actually some people in this chat that I know from high tech. So if anybody will be there, I'll be there as well.
So Didi was asking where can we find the podcast recordings that will be uploaded on YouTube.
Yep, perfect.
Join our Discord because that's where we can follow up the conversation. All of us are on there, and you'll find out our handles eventually. But for now, we'll remain secretive.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care.
Gracias.
Adios.
Adiós.